All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Week 16 of the NFL season. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty. And speaking of nitty-gritty, Tampa Bay had a chance to tie the game last night. By the way, we're filming this on Tuesday the 19th. And they lost on the Murray's missed field goals, a potential 54-yard game-tying field goal, and Atlanta escapes with a victory.
Well, Tampa Bay, since the first day of training camp, has had issues with their field goal kicker. They drafted a kicker in the first round.
That Spanish guy, whatever it was. Yeah.
And then they had
and they cut him and everyone.
Who's the guy? They had Nick Folk.
Nick Folk, right? Yeah, sounds right.
So
played for the Jets.
Yeah. So
the Eagles, I think.
Both guys aren't with the team. I think Nick Folk got released after the Patriots game after he missed 3 field goals, which cost him the game. A 54-yarder, that's if he had missed a chip shot, I think it would be a different story. But they've had field goal issues, the whole entire season. Now, special teams is definitely the most underrated part of the 3 phases of football by far. You look at a team with like the Eagles, who against the Giants had a blocked punt. They had a fumble recovery, and it was one more of the special teams. But special teams will win and lose the games. End of story. And the bottom line is, if you don't have good special teams, you're going to lose these close ones, and they add up. So even if it's 2 or 3 games that it costs you throughout the year, that could be the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs. So Tampa, had a bad year, I would say. They've been touted as a team that was going to turn around, and this would be the year with a quarterback and a head coach like that. So, a 54-yarder to tie the game, that's why you thank God when you have your Dan Baileys and your Stephen Gostkowskis and guys that, can hit 50-yarders consistently. So, you don't know how bad your special teams is until you don't have guys that can play.
That's what happens. Speaking of which happens, Dirk Cutter says Winston played his best game. He was impressed with him despite the loss, and says Winston is working his way to be on the level of the other quarterbacks in the NFC South.
Oh, that's so far from the truth. When you look at the quarterbacks in the South, you're looking at Matt Ryan, who's a top-flight quarterback, Drew Brees, who's a Hall of Famer, and Cam Newton, who's won an MVP. He's not even close there yet. He has to put together a full 16-game season. He has to get his team to the playoffs and win a playoff game to even be in the same conversation as those guys. All 3 of those guys have not only won division championships, but they've been to the Super Bowl as a quarterback. And Jameis Winston hasn't even made the playoffs yet. So he's got a long way to go to be with those 3 other guys. He's got the talent, just a question of whether he can put it all together. I don't think he's a leader. He thinks he's a leader, but I think they have a long way to go in order to.
So here's the interesting question: Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota, right? Which one?
Who would I rather have?
Yeah,
Mariota.
Yeah, but who's better?
Mariota.
Really?
Yeah.
They both look like they suck.
Well, they don't suck. They're not. They're in mid-tier quarterbacks. Now, can you win games with them? Sure. Can you make the playoffs with them? Maybe. Are you going to advance in the playoffs with them? No. You can count on your hand every single year when you look at the 5, 6 top quarterbacks in the league: Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Ryan. You can even throw Cam Newton in there.
Russell Wilson
in there, who's probably the most underrated quarterback in the league. And the guy out in San Francisco, I'll tell you what, he's all he does is win.
Right. That's right.
The Tom Brady Jr. So
he's undefeated, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 5-0.
Yeah, exactly.
Undefeated.
Yeah, so you win and lose with a quarterback. If you look at San Francisco, they have the same exact team. The only thing that they have is a quarterback now, and they win games because quarterbacks will win and lose a game. So do I think Garoppolo could go in there and win a playoff game? Absolutely. I think San Francisco right now is a team nobody wants to face. They got nothing to lose, and that was a tough Tennessee's a tough team. I mean, they're going to grind you out. They don't score a lot of points, but they play good defense. And so I don't think Mariota. I think we've seen the best of Mariota. I think Winston still has a higher ceiling, but with all that being said, you got to go out and play the game. And Drew Brees wasn't an overnight story. Neither was Roethlisberger. Neither was Brady. Neither was Rodgers. These guys have done it year in and year out. So until those two step it up big time, you can't bring them in the same conversation.
All right, so we had a listener call in earlier in the show, and he's a #1 fan of the show here. And what he wanted to bring up,
Who does?
aside from Michelob Ultra and the Paw Patrol, was he wanted to bring up the fact that Jerry Richardson is his name, right?
Yeah.
He's the owner of the Carolina Panthers, and
Sure.
there were inappropriate shenanigans going on in the workplace,
Sure.
calling women doll face like we're in the 20s.
Sure.
And so now he has to sell the team based on the shenanigans. And what?
Of the racial slur.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Oh,
I didn't hear that.
Racial slur to one of the African American scouts.
Oh, I did not hear that
N-word.
part. I did not hear that part.
Yeah.
He called him that in front of him?
Yeah, the guy left the team and it was swept under the rug. Until the sexual harassment charges were brought up.
Well, having said all this, we'll get to that story in a moment, I imagine. But Joe Thomas of the Cleveland Browns,
yes,
he wants to buy the Panthers, and he's 100% serious.
Well, I've read 3 guys.
We'll get to the others.
Sean,
let's talk about Joe Thomas first. We'll get to the others.
Well, he can't be an active player on a different team.
Sure. I'm assuming he'll retire.
If he retires, then look, when you sit down and think about it, yeah, you want to be an owner of a team until you actually are an owner of a team and you figure out what is. For the owners that really are hands-on, like the Rooney, Mr. Rooney, like, Kraft, like Jerry Jones, it's a lot of work, okay? I mean, it's not just, okay, let my people do their job. It's huge. You have to be involved in...
Like Fusillo huge?
In NFL, everything regarding the NFL and everything like that. Don't get me wrong, Joe Thomas would be a great owner. I think he's a great player. He's a hard-nosed guy. But the Carolina is going to go for over $1 billion. I mean, unless he has $1 billion, it's going to take a group of people.
Sure.
So we'll segue into the.
We'll segue later when it comes up.
Okay.
But here's what we will segue into. John Gruden was inducted into the Buccaneer Ring of Honor. He led Tampa Bay to a Super Bowl 37 win, and is currently an ESPN analyst, which we know. And he was on Monday night inducted into the Ring of Honor.
Well, John Gruden, I like him. My father hates him. Okay, he doesn't like him. I think that Gruden brings something that he has that old school love for. He just loves football. Everything about him is football, and he, you gotta give the guy some credit as far as his passion for the game. We don't see that as much as we. And he's very expressive. He's a very expressive.
He's an expressive driver.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, with that being said, he was involved in. He was head coach of the Raiders. Okay, and then he was traded to the Bucs, I think, for a first-round pick. And in that first year, he took over Tony Dungy's team, and he won the Super Bowl. And his quarterback was Trent Dilfer.
No.
Okay. Now, do I believe he deserves to be in that Ring of Fame Hall? Sure, because there's not. Who else are you going to put in there for the Bucs? Nobody, right? So I like Gruden. I always have. I always will. I think he's very, very.
Oh, Mike Allstott, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, he might be already in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I think he's very bright. He's a great offensive mind. I think he loves his job right now. I know every college job that comes open and every NFL job comes open, they always call Gruden's agent and find some sort of interest level. Now, they also, I don't know if you caught the bit that they asked him about the Giants.
I didn't
job.
watch the game, so I have no idea.
This was a couple weeks back. He said he'd entertain the Giants job, but Eli would not be his quarterback. So, look, I think Gruden will play it up. He likes the attention. He's an egomaniac, so it's well deserved. I mean, it was quote unquote Tony Dungy's team, but Gruden was, drove the whole thing. So I congratulate him on that, and I think, if you're a young kid that just wants to learn about football, if you watch the Monday Night Football game, you'll learn a lot, from John Gruden. Tony Romo has been surprisingly excellent this year. He's very, very smart. You can tell that he calls out all the plays before they happen and breaks it down from a quarterback's perspective. I still think Nance is out to lunch, but good for Gruden.
So, there are 5 ways that your 6-8 Miami Dolphins, because the Adam Gase connection, can make the playoffs.
Okay.
Here's number 1. Miami wins the last 2 games, and Buffalo, which is 8-6, Baltimore, which is 8-6, and Tennessee, which is 8-6, all lose out. Okay. It's option 1.
That's not.
It's not entirely sure. Now here's option 2. Miami wins the last 2 games, and 2 out of the following teams, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Tennessee, lose out. So 2 of those 3, plus the Chargers, which is 7-7, they have to win out, and then Kansas City, which is 8-6, loses out.
Not.
Here's option number 3.
Yeah.
Miami wins the last 2, and Baltimore and Tennessee lose out, plus the Chargers just lose 1 game. So Miami has to win both, and one of those games is against Buffalo, by the way. Baltimore and Tennessee have to lose out, and Chargers have to just lose 1 game.
Okay.
The 4th scenario, Miami wins the last 2 games, Buffalo and Tennessee lose out, and Oakland, which is 6-8, and the Chargers lose 1 game.
Okay.
And scenario 5, Miami wins its last 2 games, Baltimore and Buffalo lose out, and then Oakland and the Chargers lose 1 game. It's the same thing.
So it's.
Oh, no, it's Baltimore and Buffalo. So Buffalo and Tennessee lose out, or Baltimore and Buffalo lose out. And then Oakland and Chargers have to lose just 1.
Let's look at the 3 main teams in that scenario.
Baltimore, Tennessee, Buffalo.
Yeah. So the Ravens play the Colts this week.
They'll win.
They're going to win that game.
Yep.
But I think their last game is against. Oh, they have the Bengals at home. So they have the Colts at home and the Bengals at home.
They should win both.
They should win both.
So then we take a look at Buffalo and Tennessee. Buffalo plays the Pats, and they play Miami. They theoretically could lose both games, right?
Well,
so let's look at Tennessee.
In that scenario.
Yeah, but who does Tennessee have?
Yeah, let me check.
All right.
So Tennessee, okay, the Titans play the Rams.
They're going to get murdered.
It's in Tennessee.
Somebody I was listening to the radio.
And they play the Jaguars.
Yeah, Tennessee could lose both of those games.
Keep in mind,
Chargers just have to lose 1.
Keep in mind that Jaguar game in week 17
might be irrelevant because they're going to be the number 3.
They've already clinched.
They're going to be locked into the 3 season.
Correct. So they may not.
Play.
Correct, but they still could. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Buffalo loses 2 games. Okay.
Yeah.
And then if that were to happen, and in the I could see the Titans losing 2 games. Okay. Now, the big thing is the Dolphins have to go to Kansas City and win a game.
Sure.
Which it may not happen. Probably not on paper, but they beat New England. So if they beat New England, then they theoretically could go into Kansas City and beat Kansas City. But that's when you're in December, and this is how I always looked at my time with the San Francisco 49ers is. If you're in December and you're still playing meaningful football, then there's been somewhat of success. Okay, when you look at the Miami Dolphins, the way they started out with Chris Foerster and all the shenanigans, for them to rebound. I know they're 6-8, and you can't really say good things about a 6-8 team, but I've seen weirder things happen. So,
all right, Bills and Patriots. Speaking of meaningful football. Bills and Patriots set for most meaningful late-season meetings since 1999. A win over the Patriots on Sunday would greatly improve the Bills' odds of reaching their first postseason in 17 years.
I think that the Patriots are going to annihilate the Bills on Sunday. I think, Gronk is going to be Gronk, and I tell you what, Sunday's game was one of the best games he's ever played as a pro, and that's saying a lot because he's had a lot of unbelievable games. The guy that he, jumped on is reeling back on his comments. I don't know if you heard his comments. He called up Ryan Clark, who does CBS, and he says we're going to get the dog pound out, or we're gonna go after.
Oh, Gronkowski. Yeah.
So he's backed.
The boys are coming for him.
He's backed off of those comments. I'm sure someone sat him down in the office and said,
this isn't the streets.
This is what the Bills are going to have to do. They're going to have to be 75% on third down. Okay, have to turn New England over at least 2 times. They're going to need a special teams turnover, and they're going to have to limit New England in the red zone to just field goals. If they can do those 4 things, then they have a great shot at winning. But with that being said, New England, maybe they're playing New England at the right time after the game on Sunday night probably took a lot out of them, but I still think it's a 4-quarter game, and I think New England will win. But I still think New England will win big.
Robbie Gould quietly putting together a record-setting season. Robbie Gould, who had made 6 field goals, including a game winner on Sunday, has 15 field goals in his past 3 games, something no kicker has ever done.
That's impressive. Good for him.
Quarterback Patrick Mahomes II could be making his Chiefs debut soon. If the Chiefs clinch the division title on Sunday and are locked into the 4th seed, Mahomes could be their starting quarterback versus Denver.
Well, I think that's the right play. Alex has had really a hot and cold year. Started off as, for the first 4 or 5 weeks as the leading candidate for, him and Wentz for MVP. Then they took a nosedive and really have the last 2 weeks have kind of, rebounded and stopped the bleeding and got 2 big divisional wins. But if they do clinch against Miami, then you might as well, look to see what you got. If you're going to be the 4th seed, no more, no less, then, you don't need to go out there and, play anymore. That's the time to get your rest.
One of Jaguars' MVPs, receivers coach, old friend Keenan McCardell.
Yeah.
Keenan McCardell lost his top 3 receivers at different points this season, but the replacements have not only stepped in, they performed.
You got to give Jacksonville a lot of credit this year. Doug Marrone, we were talking about him the other night, and what a great head coach he is, and Coughlin coming in as a vice president or the president of football operations. Blake Bortles has been a very quiet story this year. He's really played extremely well. I think he threw for over 300 yards in the first half against Houston on Sunday. Fournette's been injured, but they really have, I think I've told you, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, it's not really the players that you have as starters, because in the NFL, everyone's going to get hurt. You have to deal with injuries. It's fulfilling those backups. And right now, those backups are coming in and really stepping it up and not skipping a beat. Their defense is legit. It's the real deal. And I think going forward, the Jacksonville's a team that is probably, they're at 10-4. I don't know who on earth thought they were going to be 10-4. And the bottom line is, I think they're going to end up with a 3 seed. And they deserve it. I mean, and Marrone and McVay are probably going to be up there as the 2 coaches of the year. I still think I'd give it to McVay just because the Rams are a powerhouse right now in a tougher NFC than the AFC. But with that being said, Jacksonville's had a hell of a year. You got to give a lot of credit to the coaching staff, Keenan McCardell with the receivers, a lot of no-name guys. But going forward, it's not a team that I'd like to see in the playoffs with nothing to lose.
Colts are just a few plays away from being the winless Browns. The Colts have 3 victories this season, but one of them came in overtime, and the other 2 came down in the final seconds.
Well, the Colts have had a terrible, terrible, terrible year. Starting, in the offseason with, the question mark around their, high-profiled quarterback Andrew Luck, and the fact of the matter whether he was going to be ready for the season or not. They said early on that he'd be ready by week 4, week 5, and week 4, week 5 came, and he was even worse than he was, in the preseason. So, with that being said, they made a trade and they acquired a very good quarterback, and I think Jacoby Brissett has really done a better than average job in Indianapolis. The head coach is, I'd be shocked if he didn't get fired. They do have 3 wins. With all that being said, I think it's been a very poor year at best. They're going to get a high draft pick. You figure they're going to get the 1, 2,
second or third
pick overall. You figure that they still have Luck coming back. Luck will add 3 or 4 wins on his own there, but going forward, they still needed to get that roster back to where it needs to be. When Bill Polian was there, and they had the most guys on their team that were drafted that stayed on the original team. So I think they're going to get a new head coach. I think they're going to clean house and go from there.
Thomas Davis, Panthers must remain focused on winning the Super Bowl. It has been a tumultuous 48 hours for Thomas Davis and the Panthers franchise, but the veteran linebacker is focused on the ultimate prize.
Well, Carolina, with everything that's been going on this year, they're sitting there at 10-4 right now, and they have the 5th playoff spot, the first wild card spot. And the NFC South has arguably been the best division of football. Right now, they have 3 teams that would make the playoffs. New Orleans winning the division, Carolina, and Atlanta is right there at 9-5 in the 6th seed. But still, as a 6th seed, Atlanta, the team that went to the Super Bowl last year. You're looking at a first-round matchup in Atlanta at the Rams, which should be a great game in New Orleans, Carolina. So I think we've said this all along that the NFC is far superior than the AFC this year. With that being said, Carolina, they've had some ups and downs as far as injuries go. They made a big trade. They traded their top receiver, but the guy who was really filled in is Devin Funchess. Jonathan Stewart's been running the ball real well. McCaffrey has stepped in there. The linebackers, Thomas Davis and Kuechly when he's healthy. The defensive line. You got to give a lot of credit to a team that lost its general manager, lost its assistant general manager, and now lost its owner, and they're still 10-4. So overall, they've been successful.
Destination Kansas City. NFL's most likely playoff matchup is Ravens at Chiefs. ESPN's Football Power Index has Ravens-Chiefs in the playoffs at a 67% chance of occurring.
Well, as we speak right now, Baltimore is not in the playoffs, right? You said...
As of right now, Baltimore isn't, right?
You said Ravens-Chiefs, right?
Ravens-Chiefs.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Buffalo is sitting there at 8-6. They have the tiebreaker over Baltimore. I guess 67%. I'd have to look into that further. As far as what I'm looking at right now, Jacksonville and Buffalo would play in the first game, and then Kansas City and Tennessee. But you have the Chargers sitting there at 7-7. You have the Baltimore sitting there at 8-6, and then you have the Miami and Oakland at 6-8. So there's still a lot of things that can happen if teams win out, like we discussed earlier, and then other teams lose. If that is the scenario, I think Baltimore has, overall, they're sitting there not even in the playoffs, but I think if they were to play Buffalo or Tennessee or even Kansas City, I think Baltimore is better than all 3 of those teams. But still, the record is the most important thing. So if that is a matchup, it'll probably be any playoff game is a good game. So we'll see what happens.
Should Pats give fewer snaps to Gronk with the possible Bills retaliation in mind? Bills players were enraged after Rob Gronkowski's hit on Tre'Davious White earlier this month, but how often does a team follow through on revenge?
I don't think you'll see much. I don't know what they can possibly do to him. It would have to be a cheap shot or after the play. The refs have to know going into this game that there were some shenanigans that went 2 or 3 games ago. So they already know that. If there's any inkling of bad blood, then they have no problem throwing a 15-yarder or kicking a guy out of the game. If they think something's going to be shot or illegal hit, they'll be looking for that. I mean, they're human just like me or you. They know all what's going on and what had happened last time. So I think it's a lot of talk about nothing. I don't think anything's going to happen physically unless Buffalo wants to go after knees and Achilles and calves and all that stuff. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal.
It hasn't always been pretty, but Falcons 2 wins shy of NFC South crown. The Falcons haven't looked crisp for much of 2017, but they pulled off another close call Monday and controlled their destiny in the NFC South race.
Yeah, Atlanta, has had a really up and down year. I think at their lowest point, they lost to the Jets after going up big,
17-0.
17-0. They lost to that game to the Jets, who are garbage, to be honest with you. So, but they're right back there, and they still have Matt Ryan. They still have Julio Jones. They still have Tevin Coleman. They still have Devontae Freeman, or what's his name? Freeman. And their defense is still really good. They have a great head coach. They have a great general manager. They're playing in a brand new building. Like I said, Atlanta as a 6th seed is a team that I would not want to play in the playoffs. But with that being said, they still have to take care of business. And I guess if they win out with help, they can sneak into that 4th seed and win the division. But teams that are on their heels is Detroit's there at 8-6. Seattle's the 8th seed right now at the team. They're 8-6, and then Dallas is 8-6. So, Seattle is that team that got trounced by a Rams team at home. Seattle has lost some home games this year, which I can't remember the last time they lost this many home games, but. I don't think Detroit's going to make it. I don't think Detroit's a good football team at all, even though they're sitting there at 8-6. I don't see a scenario where unless Seattle, does something, but the teams ahead of them just have better records. So we'll see what happens.
The Saints could be the first team in 42 years with 2 Pro Bowl running backs. The Saints have as prolific of a running back duo as the NFL has seen in the past 40 years. So can both Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara make the Pro Bowl?
Absolutely, and why not? I mean, both guys are a 1-2 punch. In anytime you have a quarterback like Drew Brees and Michael Thomas, I believe the receivers, who's very underrated. He's doing. Michael Thomas is his new Brandon Cooks, and the running game they've gotten Kamara. I think he's a rookie out of Alabama, if I'm correct. I heard they were talking about on the radio. I guess. Like 3 or 4 years ago, the 4 running backs they had were T.J. Yeldon, the running back Henry from.
So was it Derrick Henry?
Yeah, from Tennessee.
Was it Derrick Henry?
Yeah. Alvin Kamara, and the last one was I can't think of it right now, but there was another.
Was it Bush?
No. I'll think of it, but. With that being said, he's come on the scene and is making a case for Offensive Rookie of the Year. We'll see what happens, but anytime you have a running game like that, you're gonna beat a lot of teams when you have a 1-2 punch like the New Orleans has.
So, Cardinals losing arms race in the NFC West with no clear replacement for Carson Palmer on their roster. The Cardinals are the only NFC West team without a long-term answer at quarterback.
Yeah, look, they knew what they were getting with Carson Palmer. If he's healthy, then he can take them to the playoffs with him and Fitzgerald and the receivers that they have down there, the fast guys, both Browns down there. The backup, it has been a question mark now for years down there. Drew Stanton has played decently, and whoever else has been filling in down there. I think Arizona is a solid franchise. We'll see if Arians is coming back for another year. I think he should retire, but that's just me. I'm sure they'll either draft a guy or go out and sign a veteran so they can have solidify that quarterback position, or at least see if Palmer is good for one more year. If not, then start over new.
Detroit Lions' path to the playoffs: win out, get help from the NFC South. The Lions still have a chance to make it to the postseason, but it all starts with them winning their final 2 games.
And if we take a look at what Detroit has, okay, they're at the Bengals, which they should win, right?
Yep.
And then they finish up home against the Packers, who don't have Aaron Rodgers is shut down for the season. Had a good game last week, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And I think the Lions, if they finish there at 10-6, we'll see what happens. They're going to need some help, but there's no reason why they should not win their final 2 games and get to 10-6.
So Darius Slade believes he's done enough to be a Pro Bowler, and today he'll find out. He expects to hear his name called Tuesday night as one of the 4 cornerbacks headed to the Pro Bowl in Orlando, Florida.
You know, the cornerback position for the Pro Bowl is it's always, there's so many guys, not so many, but a lot of corners out there that deserve to be Pro Bowlers. Only 4 get selected from, the NFC and the AFC. So, is he one of the top 4? I don't know. It's not my job to say. He could be, he might not be, but he's had a good enough year to warrant a argument. So we'll see what happens.
Confident Bryce Petty expects to rebound after easy fixes. On Sunday, Bryce Petty will make his 6th career start, and he's optimistic that he'll be better than he was against the Saints.
Well, the Jets, they've needed a quarterback since Joe Namath, So with that being said, everyone wanted to see Bryce Petty, and now they've got to look at him. I think he'll play the next 2 games and. Going forward, I don't think Bryce Petty is the answer unless he shocks me and becomes a Kirk Cousins or something like that, or like a Tony Romo, guys, as backups, go into the starting row and be, good quarterbacks. He's a young guy. They love him. He's got a live arm, and I think it's the best option they got. So, we'll see how he finishes and then what he can bring to the New York Football Jets next year.
Chris Jones didn't let anybody in on the fake punt secret. Cowboys punter Chris Jones went rogue on his fake punt call Sunday, but his improvising was a big boost for the Cowboys in their win at Oakland.
Yeah, it was 4th and 10 from, I think, their own 35 or 40, and, it was an unbelievable fake. I mean, he cut right through the defense for about 20, 25 yards, so that was heads up. He must have saw something, and he took it and ran, for a team that's, battling for a playoff spot. It was, if he didn't pick that up, they were in trouble. But he did, and they eked out a 3-point win against Oakland on the road.
49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo helping to bring Levi's Stadium back to life. With Jimmy Garoppolo now leading the way, fans of the 49ers turned out in greater numbers and created more excitement during Sunday's win.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a team that since they Kaepernick, did his thing and really wiped out 2 years of the San Francisco 49ers, season, almost 3 years, 2.5. Look, we as New England fans, we know how good Garoppolo is. We know, that when New England drafted him, they had a plan for him, and, you got to give Garoppolo a lot of credit. He learned every single thing he could have from Tom Brady in a 2 or 3 years period, and really he's a guy that's only going to get better. His ceiling is extremely high. They're gonna have to re-sign him long term, and I think just for his last 3 games, granted they played Tennessee, they played Houston, and I forgot the other.
Was it Cleveland?
Or Indianapolis?
It was one of them.
Anyway, he wins games, and bottom line, he's getting better, and the guys, anytime you bring in a guy like that to the team and everyone's down, he's a guy that has really done a great job so far. Fans get excited. There's excitement going into next year with however they finish this year, because they know it's a guy that can win them games, and the age-old, story in the NFL is you have to have a quarterback to win. Bottom line, end of story. And he's a guy that can win games for you. So,
Bill Belichick impressed by Gronk's ability to gain yards after low catches. Part of what made Rob Gronkowski's game Sunday so remarkable was his ability to make more out of plays where he had to go low just to corral the ball.
Yeah, I was harping on that one catch on Sunday night, and that he's unbelievably athletic for his size, and to reach down and in one fell swoop, catch the ball that's literally on top of the ground, and then, somersault after that. He's an unbelievable athlete at the size and the strength that he has. He's, in my opinion, the best tight end of all time. And I don't think when his career is over, I don't think there's a close second. Now, he's not going to play as long as Shannon Sharp or Jason Witten or, Tony Gonzalez or all these guys that are Hall of Famers, but as far as being a player that, can change games, none of those tight ends, even come close to the difference that Gronkowski makes when he's with New England. And, I think he had, 7 catches for 186 yards or something like that. That whole last drive was to Gronkowski. I was telling that to Andy. I was like, just go to Gronk 4 times. They have 4 downs, go to Gronk every single time. And he's a matchup nightmare. And, that's one of the main reasons that teams don't play man-to-man against is because they have to cover. They have one guy on Gronkowski, and it's never it's like an 8th grader. Like we always say, it's an 8th grader going down, against a 2nd grader. The 8th grader's going to win every time. With that being said, they need Gronk to be healthy, and he's had 2 games he hasn't played, one to injury, one to suspension. But he's a competitor. Bill Belichick, we know how he feels. If the guy's able to play, he's going to play, no matter what the score is, no matter what the he's not going to sit guys. He's going to let them play. In a couple of years, actually, he got burned. Remember, he was on the field goal block team.
Sure.
And he broke
his arm
wrist.
again.
Yeah, he broke his wrist. Yeah,
again.
something like that. So
that was the year they missed him. That's the year they lost to Denver in the AFC Championship game. I know, because Gronkowski dropped the 2-point. He got held in the end zone for the 2-point conversion. Would have tied. No, it was Carolina. I'm talking about Denver in the playoffs. It wasn't that year because he was in the end zone. He got held. It was a playoff game in the AFC Championship game in Denver, and they lost. The Pats lost. Remember, Gronkowski missed an extra point. And
that wasn't the same year.
Yeah, I know. I just said that. I said I thought it was. Okay. It's not.
I got you.
Yeah. Stat shows Jaguars might have better than 50-50 chance of winning the Super Bowl. Since 1970, 7 of the 13 teams that averaged at least 25 points and allowed fewer than 15 won it all, and the upstart Jags are on pace to do both.
Well, I think we can officially... For this year, the Jaguars aren't the Jaguars. The Jaguars are a good football team. And, everyone still sees the Jaguars as, the team that has been terrible, which they have been. The teams with the disgusting, mustard jerseys, which are disgusting. But with that being said, they have the best defense in football. And if anything can be done, is what we've seen in the playoffs, is that if you have a defense and you get them clicking at the right time, then, they're going to be tough to beat. So the idea is, they're not a team that you want to play. They're eventually going to have to, beat New England or Pittsburgh if they want to get to the Super Bowl. And with that being said, I think if they do get to the Super Bowl, they have as good a shot as anybody in the AFC. I mean, New England obviously has a much better offense, but they can't cover, grandmother. Stephon Gilmore is had one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they couldn't cover anybody. And Juju Schuster's, 69-yard. That was just unacceptable. Now, they did come and make a play at the end, but you can't. That should never have happened. Ever. And it wasn't even like it was a big play. He was just running down the sideline.
Everybody couldn't tackle.
It wasn't even close, And fortunately, Eric Moreau made a great play, and then Mark Monroe, and then Harmon intercepted the ball. So, that was a game that reminded me of the Super Bowl last couple of years, or 3 years ago, and then last year's Super Bowl, how they went from losing the game for sure, no doubt, it's over, to the change in the call. And I just want to say one thing on the call. By the rule, by the book, that is an incomplete pass. Okay, the guy, just because he has the ball in his hands and goes over the end zone line, does not automatically mean a touchdown. There's a difference between being a runner with the football and being a receiver, okay? Now, if a running back and reaches out and crosses the goal line, then it's a touchdown. But he never had full control of the football. And in order for that to be a touchdown, they call it, quote-unquote, surviving the ground. He needed to survive the ground because he had not made a football move. He had not corralled it. If he had brought the football into his body and then went over and the ball didn't move, then it's a touchdown. So, it's one of those calls where it's the right call, and Pittsburgh fans and they can whine and cry and moan and bitch all they want.
Happened in Dallas in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Des Bryant.
Exactly.
They would have won the game.
So that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, well, Mike Evans says we'll never quit. The Bucs wide receiver Mike Evans says Tampa Bay is not in the situation they want to be in, but the team has a job to do for the remainder of the season.
Mike Evans is a guy that they were touted as having the best receiving core in the NFL with him and Deshaun Jackson. And, I haven't been happy with Mike Evans. He hasn't had a great year this year. He did some stupid things on the field. You're 4-10. It doesn't really matter what you say now. Yeah, you can say we're going to go all out, but right now nobody really cares if you're, as a Bucs fan or a non-Bucs fan.
Blaine Gabbert and Denver trio give Redskins reason to fear life without Kirk Cousins. Keeping their starting quarterback could be very expensive for the Redskins, but the cost of losing him could prove to be much higher.
No question. I mean, the Redskins, I picked them to go to the Super Bowl this year early on. I thought they would have the offensive firepower with the running game plus the defense, and I was way off. That's on me. I was wrong about that. If they let Kirk Cousins walk, then they're idiots, because just like we said, you need a quarterback, whatever you got to do to keep him there. If you have a slapdick, as a backup quarterback, you're not going to win games. You need to keep Kirk Cousins there for the rest of his career. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts, and you're going to have to pay him money. That's the bottom line. It's the market. You got to pay quarterbacks money, and they stay with you. So that's a no-brainer to me.
Giants safety Landon Collins says Eli Apple has to grow up. Eli Apple's immature behavior hasn't made him a popular player on the Giants, which Landon Collins expounded on in a Monday radio interview.
Yeah, I agree. He had a lot of trouble coming to the league, and his mother was calling the head coach and radio shows and all these other. She was out of control. He's made some immature decisions this year. He's got a boatload of talent. He got benched for performance. He wasn't playing hard, and has made some bad mistakes. But he still is young. He still has a lot of talent. And if you're gonna make mistakes and do stupid things, at least do it when your team's 2-12.
Well, talking about stupid things and making mistakes, Jerry Richardson is no stranger to incidents involving race. Even before he bought the Panthers, his restaurant company faced discrimination lawsuits.
Well, I mean, when it happens, it's just like anything else. When one thing comes out, then they're going to do it. The media is going to find everything, every little nook and cranny of your background and exploit it and show you how bad a person you are, when last week no one really had any beef with you. But now everything comes, up to the top when you open up yourself to sexual harassment and racial comments. With that being said, I read his statement to the fans. He bought the team back in 1993. He's still considers himself the number one fan. And going forward, we'll see who purchases the team. I know there's some people that are interested that I read about today. I don't know if you want me to go.
No, we'll go into it when it comes up.
Okay. So right now they have a former cheerleader running the operation. The COO is this broad. We'll see what she can do. She'll probably find a way to mess it up, though.
Tomlin says Roethlisberger certainly has authority to override play calls. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin says that quarterback Ben Roethlisberger has latitude,
yeah, sure,
as a veteran quarterback to do what he sees fit to win a game.
Look, what I was reading on the internet today was the timeout call they made after the Juju Schuster play. Ben was running down the field, emphatically jumping up and down, calling for a timeout. Mike Tomlin is just an idiot. He created an ass out of himself, saying that Ben was trying to ask me if I wanted to call a timeout, and Tomlin was shocked that they actually gave him the timeout, because it should have come from the sidelines when the Tony Correnti there said no, anyone on the field can call timeout. So if you listen to it, I can't do it justice. But if you listen to it, if you Google it and listen to his press conference, I think it was yesterday or today, he made himself look bad. Ben Roethlisberger is a veteran guy. I'm sure he has authority to do what he needed to do. Obviously he tried to get cute there with a fake spike and then try to throw in the end zone and be a hero. When they just kick a field goal and they're in overtime, they still have another shot at winning. So, he thought that was the best play for the team. And it's always like Pittsburgh is they're asked these questions, and New England will be like, look, we're not going to comment on that. We're going to move on to Buffalo. We're not going to comment that. The more Pittsburgh allows the media to get into them, the more stupid they sound. So, Ben Roethlisberger just needs to say, look, I made a decision. I thought it was the best decision at the time. I thought I could get them, not ready, not set, and it didn't happen. They lost, and that interception ended the game, and maybe ended them for the home field advantage. So
source says the Bucs' Galanton breaks leg and has surgery. The Bucs' Adarius Galanton suffered a broken left leg when he collided with a teammate during a loss to Atlanta on Monday night, a source told ESPN.
Yeah, broken legs aren't positive.
Falcons weren't happy with field at Raymond James Stadium. Several Falcons players expressed displeasure with the field conditions at Raymond James Stadium after losing their footing during Monday's win.
That's one of the surfaces that they still use grass down there, and grass is really becoming non-playable, especially this far deep in the season. So I would vocalize my displeasure as well.
So Steelers injured Brown ruled out versus Texans. The Steelers will be without star wide receiver Antonio Brown for at least Sunday's game against the Texans because of a lower leg contusion.
I thought it was Monday they played, but he snapped his leg.
I thought it was Monday too. This is obviously a wrong thing.
So it's a big loss, but they're still 11-3. I think they can win without him against a bad Texans team.
Bill Belichick doesn't rule out using final IR spot for a player to return. Receiver Malcolm Mitchell with his knee and defensive tackle Vincent Valentine with his knee would be the top two candidates who, if ready, could use the IR spot.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they can add anybody on that defense, you never thought that Kyle Van Noy would be such an integral part to the defense. Like, he's the reason why they're playing so badly. They still have there's a lot of money locked up in that secondary, and they right now can't cover anybody.
Cowboys to see referee John Hussey in Week 16 for second straight year. John Hussey called last season's Week 16 win against the Lions and will be the referee for Sunday's matchup with the Seahawks.
I don't.
Relevant.
Yeah.
Shane Ray says recovery from wrist surgeries will end the season. A frustrating season has ended for the linebacker who has been dealing with pain and complications from an injury suffered in training camp.
Nothing.
Randall Cobb on the Packers says missing the playoffs isn't acceptable. Packers wide receiver Randall Cobb shares his disappointment in Green Bay missing the playoffs for the first time since 2008.
Yeah, good. Losing is not an option.
Tomlin predicts catch rule debate to resume in the offseason. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin acknowledges the need to revisit some of the league's rules, including what constitutes a catch.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, anytime you get beat, or it doesn't work your way, you're not going to be in favor of it. Now, if this was the opposite, then Tomlin wouldn't care. So, Pittsburgh, they're sore losers. New England owns them, especially at Pittsburgh, so whatever you want to call it, they won the game. So, you can get mad over, however mad you want to get, it's still a win for the good guys.
All right, so the Seattle Seahawks' potential path to the playoffs became a bit more clear Monday night when the Atlanta Falcons hung on for a victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It also even got harder. Atlanta's victory eliminated whatever remote chance Seattle had to make the playoffs with a 9-7 record. So the Seahawks, who are 8-6, will need to win their final two games at Dallas on Sunday and at home versus Arizona in Week 17 to have any shot at the playoffs, and they'll also need help. 538.com gives the Seahawks only a 10% chance at making the playoffs, and ESPN's analytics team has it at 14.1%. That combines Seattle's chances of making it is either the NFC West champ, 2.1%, the number 5 seed, 0.5%, or the number 6 seed, 11.5%. Here's how the Seahawks can reach the playoffs. As the NFC West champs, this one is pretty straightforward, yet still difficult. As stated, the Seahawks need to win out to have any shot at the playoffs. If they do that, and if the Los Angeles Rams lose their final 2 games to finish 10-6, the Seahawks would be division champs. Both teams would have the same record, but Seattle would own the applicable tiebreaker, which is a better record in the division. The Rams play at Tennessee, then at home for San Francisco. As a wild card, this is where it gets complicated. The simplest explanation is that the Seahawks would earn a wild card berth if they win out, and either the New Orleans Saints, who are 10-4, the Carolina Panthers, who are 10-4, or Atlanta, which is 9-5, lose their final 2 games, while the Detroit Lions, who are 8-6, also lose at least one of their final 2 games. So this is the easiest way. They win out. The Saints or Panthers or Atlanta have to lose out, and the Lions have to lose 1. New Orleans plays at home versus Atlanta, then at Tampa Bay. Carolina has the Bucs at home, and then the Falcons in Atlanta. Detroit plays in Cincinnati, and then home versus Green Bay. The Seahawks would lose out on tiebreakers to Atlanta head-to-head and to Detroit common games if they each finished 10-6 and were in line for the same wildcard spot. The other wildcard scenario for Seattle entails both New Orleans and Carolina losing out. In that scenario, Atlanta would win the NFC South, and the Seahawks would own tiebreakers over New Orleans and Carolina because of a better conference record. Seattle would then claim one of the 2 wildcard spots, even if Detroit wins out. Dallas, who is 8-6, is also in the mix for a wildcard spot, but all of the above scenarios assume the Seahawks beating the Cowboys and Cardinals. Green Bay was eliminated from contention with Atlanta's win, which could end up working against the Seahawks in a way. The Packers just shut down Aaron Rodgers for the remainder of the season, which makes Detroit's Week 17 matchup with Green Bay significantly easier. But again, none of those scenarios matter unless the Seahawks take care of their part of the equation by winning out.
After just hearing all that, I don't think Seattle's going to make the playoffs. Detroit is not going to lose both games. I don't think the 3 NFC South teams are going to lose their games. So, look, Seattle's a good team, but, the NFC West is stacked. So, they've lost some bad games at home, and that's what they can turn and look at that they didn't take care of the games they should have.
Lions put wide receiver T.J. Jones on season-ending IR, ending the season with a wide receiver who had jumped to number 3 on the depth chart after Kenny Golladay injured his hamstring in Week 3.
No comment.
Let's see. The Jaguars are the number 1 threat to the Patriots.
Sure.
Redskins place Monte Nicholson on injured reserve. Nothing on Monte Nicholson with a concussion. Let's see here. Here we go. Pete Carroll says accountability needed for Seahawks to rebound from Rams debacle. Seattle's embarrassing 42-7 home loss to the Rams has the team on the outside of the playoffs with only 2 games remaining.
Couldn't happen to I hate Seattle. I hate Pete Carroll. I hate their team. So, if they lose, then I'm happy.
Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson's rehab from torn ACL, quote, on the right track. The rookie quarterback injured in early November, which ruined McLovin's season, fantasy-wise. Expects to return soon after the Texans organized team activities and is happy with his rehab.
Oh, that doesn't mean anything for me right now.
Why facing the Patriots feels like running uphill, New England's valuable kickoff game. When the NFL moved the touchbacks to the 25-yard line in 2016, it gave a surprising leg up to Bill Belichick's very special teams.
Yeah, you see them kick it in Gostkowski does a great job, and the guy receives it at his own 2 or 3 or 4 yard line, has to run it out. Like I said, Bill Belichick underneath it all is a very, very good special teams coach. He primarily has always worked on the defensive side, but he puts just as much time on the special teams, and it really shows. When Slater's healthy, he adds another element to that special teams. But with all that being said, without special teams, then you're not going to win many football games.
Malcolm Jenkins' teammates surprised North Philly families with holiday gifts. Jenkins and some of his teammates delivered gift baskets of food and presents to unsuspecting families in impoverished areas of Philadelphia.
That's nice.
Meet the Browns of the NFC, Pat, the Chicago Bears. While the Browns have been the NFL's punchline since the late 80s, the Bears have nearly matched their futility over the past 5 seasons.
Yeah, the Bears are bad. I mean, they got, they've had a lot of good draft, top-tier draft picks. We'll see if they can they mortgaged their drafts for the next like 3 or 4 years with Trubisky. So we'll see if he can do the job for him.
Browns' last true hope for a win comes Sunday in Chicago. With their season finale New Year's Eve in Pittsburgh against the 11-3 Steelers, the Browns' best chance to avoid a winless season comes in Chicago.
Yeah, it should be a doozy.
Yeah, it is a doozy. Doozy. And, Pat, that is it. Let's go right to the scores.
You want to talk about the Panthers?
Oh, yeah. So, I believe I read that Sean Diddy Combs and Colin Kaepernick headline a group of people who want to buy. And
there's somebody else. It's someone else. I can't think of it right now, but there's another name. I had it on the tip of my tongue 20 minutes ago, but Sean Diddy Combs has the money to do it. I don't see how Kaepernick I don't see Sean Diddy Combs and Kaepernick and then Joe Thomas, as owners, but you never know.
We have some late-breaking Patriots news. The Patriots have re-signed punt returner Bernard Reedy to their practice squad. Reedy had been on the active roster, but was released last Wednesday to make room for the signing of wide receiver Kenny Britt. Defensive lineman Marcus Hardison, who we really needed, he was released from the practice squad to account for Reedy's return. So there you go. So let's go into last week.
There's another, did you see who the Steelers picked up?
No.
Boo Ridley, Stephen Ridley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Old friend Stephen Ridley.
Yeah.
I forgot about him.
All right, let's go into the spreads.
Yeah, we're going into the spreads right now, but before we do that, we have to go into the to the standings here, okay? So, last week against the spread, I went 10-5, excuse me. Yeah, I went 10-5-1 against the spread.
No, you went 10-5-1 in the picks, right?
Yeah, what the hell am I? No, the spread. How would we have a tie on the picks?
No, you said you went 7-7-2.
Where the hell? What am I looking at then?
I don't know.
It'd be 7-7-2. Yeah. So what the hell? I wrote it down in blue marker. Do I not have the correct thing? Of course not. No, that's not it. What the fuck? Yeah, I don't have the... Oh. There we go. Last week, against the spread, I went 7-7-2, so I'm now 106-109-3. And McLovin went 6-8-2, so he is now 104-111-3. I have a 2-game lead on the spreads with McLovin. Last week, I went 13-3 with the picks. I'm now 137-87. McLovin went 12-4. He is now 142-82. He has a 5-game lead over me with 2 weeks left. Let's go to the first division. Yes to anything that is cool, awesome. Went 13-3. He wins a gift card. Lev Maker 12-4. Cali Guy 11-5. CV Gunn 14-2. He wins a gift card. Dan McLean 11-5. Vadix 10-6. And our friend Steve Goldman, where art thou? Went 0-16 again. So the updated standings. There is now a tie for first between CV Gunn and Yes to Anything That Is Cool Awesome at 148-76. They both have a 6-game lead over McLovin.
Oh, boy.
Third place, we have Dan McLean at 141-83. He's 7 games out. Fourth place, we have Lev Maker at 139-85. He's 8 games out. Or no, that can't be right. 9 games out, excuse me. Sixth place, we have Cali Guy at 126-98. He's 22 games out. Now, Cali Guy, if you remember last year, was horrific. Yeah. Talk about improvement. I mean, he's like, reminds me of my high school hockey career. My first game ever as a goalie, I got murdered by a team that I shouldn't have got murdered by. Probably 7 games later, we played him again, and I shut him out. And the coach comes to me at the end of the game and said, "Are you the same goalie from the first game?" I said, "Yeah." He looked at me in disbelief and said, "Boy, did you get good quick." And what I wanted to say to him was, "No, I just sucked that game. You guys are horrible." But I said thank you, and that was it. Snowden is who we played, and I shut him out.
Nice.
I had like 4 to 6 shutouts in my career.
Nice.
All against Snowden and O'Brien. But anyway, Boston Public Schools. So last place, and then we have last place. We have Steve Goldman at 83 and 141, and he has 65 games out of
He's
first.
mathematically eliminated.
Yeah, sure. So then the second division, Jennifer Lynn there, Goldilocks, 11-5. She is in first place at 101-62. Second place, we have a new guy, Blake Rios, comes from the dead.
16.
The first 16-0 season in fantasy football history with McLovin. This is our 3rd year doing this. Third or second?
Third.
Third year doing it, right?
Third year.
Third year doing it. 16-0. Unbelievable job, Blake Rios.
Good job.
You moved into second at 92 and 71. You're still 9 games out. And then Dennis Ramirez, 10 and 6. He's 91 and 72. He's 10 games out. So, I have this. I need a piece of paper. I should be able to write on this. Let's see. This is a water bill that I got to pay, but shouldn't be the end of the world. So, let's throw that there. Let's do this here. All right. AAPM. All right. Saturday's games at 4:30 p.m. We have the Indianapolis Colts 3-11, 1-6 on the road, going into Baltimore to face the 8-6 Ravens, who are 4-2 at home. Baltimore favored by 13.5.
These actually mean something though. I'm gonna take Baltimore.
So I'm taking
minus 13.5.
Taking Indy. Next up, 8:30 p.m. game. Minnesota 11-3, 5-2 on the road, going into Green Bay to face the 7-7 Packers, who are 4-3 at home, with Brett Hundley probably starting. Minnesota favored by 9.
Green Bay plus 9.
Taking Minnesota minus 9. Next up, Sunday's games. We have the Cleveland Browns, who are 0-14, 0-6 on the road, going into Chicago. 4-10 Bears, 2-5 at home. Chicago favored by 6.5.
The Browns plus 6.5.
Yeah, I think the Browns are actually going to win this game. I've said that all year, though. Detroit, 8-6, 5-2 on the road, going into Cincinnati, 5-9, 3-4 at home. Detroit, 4.5-point favorites.
Cincinnati plus 1.5.
Taking Detroit. Next up, the Los Angeles Rams, 10-4, 6-1 on the road, going into Tennessee, 8-6, 5-1 at home. Rams favored by 6.5.
Rams minus 6.5.
Okay, I agree. Next up, Miami, 6-8, 2-5 on the road, going into Kansas City, 8-6, 5-2 at home. Kansas City favored by 10.5.
Miami plus 10.5.
I agree. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills, 8-6, 2-4 on the road, going into Gillette to face the Patriots, who are 11-3, 4-2 at home. New England favored by 12.5.
New England minus 12.5.
Taking Buffalo plus the points. But as you said, they're going to annihilate Buffalo. We will see. Atlanta, 9-5, 5-2 on the road, going into New Orleans, 10-4, 6-1 at home. This might be the game of the week. New Orleans favored by 5.5.
Atlanta plus 5.5.
Taking New Orleans. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, 7-7, 3-4 on the road, going in to face the Jets, who are 5-9, 4-3 at home. Chargers favored by 6.5.
Chargers minus 6.5.
I agree. Next up, we have the Broncos, 5-9, 1-6 on the road, going into Washington to face the Redskins, who are 6-8, 4-3 at home. Washington favored by 3.5.
Washington minus 3.5.
I agree. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 4-10, 1-6 on the road, going into Carolina to face the 10-4 Panthers, who are 5-2 at home. Carolina favored by 10.
Carolina minus 10.
I agree. Next up, the 405 game. Jacksonville Jaguars, 10-4, 4-2 on the road, going into San Francisco to face the 4-10 49ers and the undefeated Jimmy Garoppolo. They're 2-5 at home. Jacksonville favored by 4.5.
San Francisco plus 1.5.
Boom, taking Jacksonville minus the points. 425 game. Seattle Seahawks, 8-6, 4-3 on the road, going into Dallas to face the 8-6 Cowboys, who are 3-4 at home. Dallas favored by 5.
Seattle plus 5.
I agree. Next up, we have the New York Giants, 2-12, 1-6 on the road, going into Arizona to face the 6-8 Cardinals, who are 4-3 at home. Arizona favored by 3.5.
Giants plus 3.5.
I also agree with that. Monday's games, we have 2 Christmas Day games. We have which are both irrelevant. Pittsburgh, 11-3, 6-1 on the road, going into Houston to face the 4-10 Texans, who are 3-4 at home. Pittsburgh's favored by 9. Yeah.
Texans plus 9.
Ooh, I'm taking Pittsburgh minus 9. Houston plus 9, you say. And then 8:30 Christmas night game. Oakland 6-8, 2-4 on the road, going into Philly to face the 12-2 Eagles, who are 6-0 at home. Philadelphia favored by 9.
Oakland plus 9.
I agree with that. All right, so that is the spread. Let's go right into the picks.
Okay.
So we have Colts Ravens.
Ravens.
I agree. Next up, Vikings Packers.
Vikings.
I agree. Next up, Browns, Bears.
Bears.
Okay, I'm taking Cleveland. You're taking Chicago. Next up, Lions, Bengals.
Lions.
Okay, I agree. Next up, Rams, Titans.
Rams.
I agree. Next up, Dolphins, Chiefs.
Chiefs.
I agree. Next up, Bills, Patriots.
New England.
I agree. Next up, Falcons, Saints.
Saints.
I agree. Next up, Chargers, Jets.
Chargers.
I agree. Next up, Broncos, Redskins.
Redskins.
I agree. Next up, Buccaneers, Panthers.
Panthers.
I agree. Next up, Jaguars, 49ers.
Jags.
I agree. Next up, Seahawks, Cowboys.
Seahawks.
Take Dallas. Ezekiel Elliott's back. You're taking Seahawks, right?
Yep.
Giants, Cardinals.
Cardinals.
Ooh, taking the Giants. And then Steelers, Texans.
Steelers.
I agree. And then Eagles, Raiders.
Philly.
I agree. All right, guys, Week 16 is in the books. McLovin's going to see the Providence Friars against the Houston, I don't know what they are, tomorrow night. So he'll be doing
Mohegan Sun.
Mohegan Sun. He's going to do a little gambling, and he's going to do a little basketball is what he's going to do.
Yeah.
With Don, the Michelob Ultra, and the whole deal, and the Paw Patrol, and the Warwick school bus, and everything. So, guys, thanks for watching the Loafers at the TV. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.